So, congratulations all on your endurance. It's been quite a heavy day, and I think you'll appreciate that there's been lots of very good talks ranging from basic science through to clinical and some of the supportive things around that. I think the last speaker of the day needs very little introduction. I'm going to invite Ghassan Abou-Alfa to come and really pull the whole day together. What does it mean when we're talking about intrahepatic cholangios, extrahepatic cholangios? Are we really still talking about an anatomical differentiation, or should we now be thinking much more about molecular subgroups of patients? How do we integrate the basic science and the clinical? And how does all then this mean that patient care is improved and patient outcomes are better? So not much of a challenge there, Ghassan, to pull it all together for us. Ghassan Abou-Alfa from Memorial has been involved with the foundation right from its start. He's the chair of the Medical Advisory Board as well as chair of the NCI Hepatobiliary Task Force. So you're very well placed to do that for us, Ghassan.
All right, good evening, everybody. So as a part of disclosure, I shared my agenda with Juan, and he approved it. So anything you don't like, you can talk to him. So I'm just here to deliver. Anyway, I would like to definitely start by thanking the foundation for hosting all of us, and to congratulate them on an incredible tour de force. This is really has been amazing. I mean, I was just saying, like jokingly outside, it's like becoming like ASCO. You don't attend the sessions anymore because you have to do all the side meetings on the side. So this is incredible. I mean, this is really to bring everybody here, talk on the side, make decision-making, planning, etc. You won't believe how much happened here. This is other than what's happening in this room. Lot of things going on. So this really speaks for the incredible effort that everybody has put together. And please, if you don't mind, join me with another round of applause for Stacy and Donna and everybody else, because it's really incredible. Thanks again to the chairs. Definitely, the work has been incredible. I mean, both of you did keep us on time, and and really kind of, I like that mix of basic and clinical. Why we didn't think about that last year, I don't know, but but no, that's really great, and thanks again for all the effort there. So definitely this is a challenge, but I'll keep it light because it's the end of the day, and for all of us just kind of put it together. If anything, this is really a summary more than anything else, because I have to tell you, every slide I'm showing you saw today, and I kind of like hijacked it or kind of stole it one way or the other. So there's nothing new here except for very few things that really my understanding kind of come to that level. So anyway, I've been tweeting today. If for those who are following, we try to do that while we are here. So kind of actually I started tweeting here last year, and now we have like hundreds of followers. So by all means, join us if anything. So anyway, so yes, that's a very important point. Are we talking about the same thing that we've been talking about for the last several years? Probably not, because this anatomic versus molecular differentiation, this is really how most of us, understood the disease. Bile ducts inside the liver, intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, bile ducts outside the liver, extrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, and that bladder on the side, gallbladder adenocarcinoma. That's really how we understood it, no more than that. And obviously, we lumped it together all along because our understanding is they all bud from the same biliary tree. This is how kind of we were all made, and as such, it makes sense. Probably they are the same thing after all. It just kind of probably different positions, just wherever they kind of those cells lay back in the lay out in the anatomy. However, that's probably a we say more sophisticated, more up-to-date differentiation of the disease. As you can see, we kept a little bit of that understanding, so at least we refer to some anatomy. You know how you kind of, when you have a city and you put new signals, you kind of refer, however, to the old ones for a while. So this really was going on over here. So intrahepatic, now we know and we understand, as you heard quite a bit today. We heard the story of FGF, we heard the story of ADH1, and obviously there are some stories that are evolving that are becoming very specific to a specific anatomy. Now, to kind of, tell you what does that mean. In other words, let's assume for a second a patient has a And by the way, we saw that. Let's assume a patient has gallbladder cancer, but they are IDH1 mutant. What do you do with them? You say, no, the treatment for IDH mutation is only for intrahepatic cholangio? Probably not. And in other words, in the future, we're going to see those kind of aberrancies coming out, but at the same time, we're going to see clearly that these anatomies, interestingly, they evolved where they evolved as cancer because of a specific pathway that we're learning about. So I would say, and this is a question that will bring up quite a bit on the domestic and national and international scene, is going forward, will we lump or do we dissect the disease? And I think already from what we heard today, I think we're going definitely against the lumping and with that sophisticated understanding that we have for the disease as we speak. This is again, the great work about, talking about this kind of like interconnectivity and interactions among the driver genes. And the interesting one that really caught our attention all along is the mutual exclusivity, which I'll show a little bit as well from work that was developed at Memorial, and also co-mutated genes, and definitely much more and many complex interactions that yet are to be discovered. I think the questions that was brought up a second ago about, mechanism of resistance or what have we, this kind of like fall into that same category. Why not everybody with the mutation will respond? What's the question there? Probably there are certain interactions that we still don't understand per se. So this is the work actually of Maeve, who's here from Memorial. Great tour de force all along, trying to understand the disease. If anything, we kind of like, did like everybody else in a way, but nonetheless, a nice panel, which is now at the moment reached 437 genes, kind of like nicely laid out in regard to the different mutations and copy numbers. We published that at ASCO last year, and what Maeve reported actually is something that is rather this mutual exclusivity of the genetic alterations. And this is a nice table that kind of plays out those mutual exclusivities and tells you, in other words, especially, for example, when it comes to the IDH1 and the FGF, there's clearly a certain exclusivity that plays a role over here. Admittedly, we were not the first or the only ones to acknowledge that. Actually, Milind kindly shared that with me as well in this slide. And obviously, there was this kind of, alterations apparent more and more in certain diseases versus the other. So I think we're going to cash on this, like, quite a bit. And I think you're going to, for those who are going to be regulars here, you're going to hear the concepts, at least for the targets of interest for the moment, and maybe others to come. This takes a little bit of time to kind of, evolve it and understand it, even though I have to admit, and this is good news, especially for the patient's loved ones, this is relatively very fast compared to what I have witnessed beforehand in regard to the understanding of mutations. 4 years ago, we didn't have any of this to talk about here. So that's really how fast it is. So another concept which kind of, I'm trying to mix and match over here, but something that's really very dear to us, and I think the foundation was very keen on supporting that approach, and literally that's why we are coming here in numbers and really working and collaborating together, is really this integrated care process. This is really what we kind of like do. We kind of, we have talent in all our institutions. We sometimes call each other, check in with each other. And if anything, what is this talent is actually to improve outcome of patients. And if anything, it's based on the wealth of knowledge. So what we are adding over here by working all together, we're adding that kind of, extra, rather than plateauing, we're extra wisdom. And this is really what we are after. That's really where we're seeing, and I'm saying that this thing kind of like is moving a little bit faster than before. I have to say we pride ourselves in the community that we live in regard to cholangiocarcinoma. And I think this was really exemplified probably here, I would say, maybe at the task force meetings in regard to the collaboration effort that we're seeing. And this is something that we kind of, promise you that we're going to continue on for sure. And if anything, we're moving, and that's really the beauty of it, we're moving from that's classically academic opportunity network, center person talking to different people, bringing the opportunities. And obviously, we are not going to be an execution network where we just kind of each one work independently, but smartly enough, we're bringing them together. And that's really where we're combining the opportunity and the execution together. So that's probably exemplified by all what we saw outside happening today in regard to the meetings that occurred. And I think a good example of that is I like to really talk about the biliary emergency card that Renuka and the nurses have done, and it's incredible. Sue and her team and Renuka on board, and in addition to the sponsors, really came out with something pretty, what looks probably obvious, but at the same time, really, this is where the opportunities came out together and made something that really means a lot to the patient and for their care, especially in an emergency setting like this. So the third one, which I'm going to talk about, is really that, and to really exemplify that, one time, like a board member came to us at Memorial and said, I understood that actually people in the lab, like Nabil, will discover something and will send it to the clinic, and you guys will test it and move on. And actually, it's not necessarily the only way. Actually, it's two-way street. And in other words, as much as we're eager to hear what the lab has to say, we're definitely also available to tell the lab what we're observing. And this is something that a lot of us do in regard to the correlative science of it. And this is probably what emanated and came into what we witnessed today. This is going to be a little bit of repetition, but just kind of to stress what the community altogether is busy with. If anything, you heard about the FGFR. It's probably my simplistic diagram, which I'm not going to go over even over. You saw some much more sophisticated explanation of the whole process today. But if anything, the fusions are really so well described and depicted at the moment, enough that we know which ones are applicable to which drug. And if anything, the BGJ was nicely illustrated and reviewed over here today. That was really a great effort that probably all of us who are sitting here on the academic clinical setting were involved in. And if anything, Milind led the effort that will be hopefully published soon with this nice waterfall plot. This does not really go, how to say, missed by the oncology community as a whole. And when you see those many in the dark blue and then the yellow, which are the confirmed responses and the stability of disease, which really crossing more than 50% or half of the curve, that really tells you that you have a strong signal that you are obligated to kind of look into a little bit further. Not only that, but also we saw it in a different way called the swimmer's plot, in others who swims to the final line the longest. And as you can see here, there are really cases where the exposure for the drug has been like really in the 1 year and obviously maintained. So definitely this is something worth looking into. There has been a little bit of challenge in regard to the adverse events, but appears to be that preemptive care and same time management will kind of overcome it altogether. If anything, we were all delighted and happy to see the commitment on the sponsor to kind of like still be interested in that regard. However, I left here a empty slide because Mitesh and I will have an agreement to have a slide at some point, but in all fairness, we're both busy. But we're really analyzing all the FGF that inhibitors that are available and try to kind of dissect where we're going to go. So we have this kind of this is what the obligation on the academic setting is, really understand what all those inhibitors are, where the priorities are, so we can really put it in a scientific manner rather than just kind of just test them and not necessarily realizing what we're doing. So this is something we promise you. We're working on it as we speak. So with this said, I think Susan and everybody else also gave fair justice to the IDH mutation. This is an incredible signal that come from literally a different world. This is not really a kinase as it was nicely depicted by some of the speakers. This is really metabolic, and I have to say this is really where it's rather more difficult. This is not an easy signal to kind of handle. Nonetheless, so far what we have heard from the phase 1 study, which actually Maeve is leading, and she will be reporting hopefully soon at ASCO, an incredible study that really took a lot of effort and really burgeoned from it the phase 3 trial that Susan nicely presented today, which I have to say it's a rather difficult study. It really kind of went through a lot of processing to end up where it is today. But I have to say proudly, it answered a scientific question. It addressed a medical need because remember, the goal is sometimes the outcome, but also the trial itself, because patients are in need for trials. And I think really Susan at the helm of Agios really did an incredible job in that regard and involved everybody around the table to kind of put this together. So obviously we have to acknowledge the efforts that are being brought in regard to the immunotherapy and the checkpoint inhibitors. We will probably hear more about that in the day to come. Nonetheless, we had a beautiful story this morning that was brought up about from Israeli about the how to say, the magic, if you want to call it, of the checkpoint inhibitors. This is an incredible story. We are definitely seeing it again and again. The way I can describe to you the immune system and the checkpoint inhibitors, being a New Yorker, this is like literally all your immune cells are the taxis, yellow in color, and pretty much lined up from uptown to downtown, and you pretty much remove every light signal in the city, and they're just all hitting. So that's really what we're talking about over here. Sometimes a little bit, we have to be careful because there could be crossing across town, right to left, or from the east to the west side, some other taxis without light signal, and this is where the side effects happen. Rarely, but they can happen. So this is something we're learning, but at the same time, we're identifying definitely the population that this might mostly work in. Dr. Bang really produced to us a nice study, the Keynote 28, which definitely was probably the early starter in that regard. And this is, again, the swimmer's plot. Again, we always like to focus on the IOs on the right lower corner, who really got the response and maintained it. And that's definitely worth seeing that subject again and again in regard to the immune therapy. The story, you heard it live today. I mean, from Mr. Riley this morning, MSI high, definitely this is something of great interest, and we're going to see more and more. It is not common, but nonetheless, it's something definitely to celebrate and make sure we take care of. And obviously now the challenge is going to be is how can we promote a immune response same way for MSI high in a non-MSI or MSI stable patient by probably promoting the immune system either by combinations of different kind, being checkpoint inhibitors, together being a promoter versus a exciter, being a kinase, being a metabolomic. This is all to come. And here we should not forget, by the way, the role of the beautiful chemotherapy, as much as we kind of, all acknowledge on both ways from patient or from doctor's relationship, is that this is not necessarily the aspire for sometimes, but nonetheless, remember, it really can make a difference for people, and same time, it could be very important base to carry on some of those modifiers that we are going to witness years to come with. So as you can see, we're busy. This is actually thanks to Lipika for lending me this. I promised Lipika I checked the agenda. I told her, don't worry, my lecture is after yours, so I'm not stealing really fully here. But anyway, this is really just speak for how much effort is happening in IOs, as nicely described a little bit earlier. So what are we doing here? Actually, this is kind of like one of my favorite slides. This is actually from the MIT. I don't know if you ever have heard about Professor Chan, but this is like somebody who wrote in a financial theory about cancer therapy and weather prediction. If anything, it depends really on what is derivatives. Anybody who's interested in the market can understand what we're talking about. But bottom line is we have to try everything. That's really what it is. We are so thin ice, we cannot come and look at you eye to eye and say, this theory or that theory. We have to try everything. We have to be so pragmatic, and really we're going to work it that way. And this is really it took like an MIT genius to kind of tell us that. But that's really what we're doing here by kind of hearing all of this coming from all the great thoughts that you heard today. So to summarize, historical anatomical nomenclature for biliary cancer is being replaced by molecular-based one. Yes, it is there. We're working on it. This is what we are really acting upon. Multidisciplinary and collaborative approaches are key for development and innovation, and we are really endowed to that, and we're going to make sure we continue on that effort. FGFR is a putative target with toxicity, but nonetheless is being worked up, and there's quite a bit of effort. IDH1, a putative promising target in second line, and we have a phase 3 trial already open and running, and immunotherapy work is definitely underway. So I'll stop here, and I'll leave it to the chairs to wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ghassan. That really does put it all into context, and I think gives you a nice rounded view of where we're up to in beginning of 2017.